It's the biggest single threat to the world. Deadlier and more brutal than the Al-Qaeda.
So let the nightmare
Spreading its reign of terror across the globe. After rampaging through Syria and Iraq, the Islamic State is now a global menace. From Paris to America and India, all are on its radar. The fringe rebel group is now a full-blown terror monster.
Four letters are demanding more global attention than anything else in the world today. The ISIS. This is the terrorist group that launched one of the worst terror attacks on Paris over the weekend. So what is it that we know about the Islamic State? The Islamic State is threatening to make things worse for the world in the times to come. On this special broadcast, we'll tell you everything you need to know about this dreaded global terrorist organization, the Islamic State.
The rise of the dreaded ISIS can be traced back to the flowering of the Jasmine Revolution. As the Arab Spring against totalitarian regimes struck Syria, the Assad government came down brutally on the largely peaceful protesters. Giving rise to rebels who started fighting back. It was 2011 and the beginning of a civil war. Battle-trained troops from the Syrian army defected and joined the ranks of the rebels. The opposing sides in the civil war soon began to be identified by their sects, Sunni rebels and Shia government. Each atrocity by one or the other camps began to draw in rabid volunteers from across the Arab world and beyond. The Al-Qaeda came from Iraq and formed the Jabhat al-Nusra group and joined ranks with the rebels in Syria. In 2012, Iran, which supported the Assad regime, entered the scene. Firstly, by pumping in military resources to the regime and by instigating the Lebanon-based Hezbollah to cross Syrian borders and join the fight against the rebels. This action in turn brought Sunni Arab countries to come out in open support of the rebels against Shia Iran and the Assad government. Billions of oil dollars in cash and sophisticated military equipment began to flow towards rebel groups. The Jabhat al-Nusra was one of the major beneficiaries. The Jabhat then split, and an independent faction shunning Al-Qaeda command acquired the name of Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. The ISIS concentrated on fighting the other rebel groups and bringing under its control large swathes of territory in Syria. It even gave up fighting the Assad regime and swept into northern Iraq and declared a caliphate of Syria and Iraq. In August 2014, the ISIS attacked Iraqi Kurdistan, an area under US protection. By September 2014, the US entered the civil war, first by sending in CIA-trained rebels into Syria, and then by airstrikes against the ISIS. Slowly over the months, the Kurdish forces, backed heavily by an US-led international coalition, began to push back ISIS, till it lost much of the territory that it had gained in Iraq and Syria. But the lure of ISIS and its caliphate has not lost its pull. Radicalized young men and women from different parts of the world keep getting attracted to the notion of an Islamic State that harks back to the Dark Ages. It is not the geographic territory that ISIS controls that is of world concern. It is the misguided minds and hearts that it continues to influence. That is the real threat of ISIS.
The world watched with shock and horror as the Islamic State decapitated, beheaded people on camera. They threw people off rooftops for being homosexuals. They burnt a pilot alive. In just 18 months, the Islamic State has become the global buzzword for the most merciless killing for brutality.
The world watched in silent horror as a young Jordanian Air Force pilot was put in a cage in an orange suit and burnt alive by the Islamic State. The images shocked the entire world. King Abdullah of Jordan joined the airstrikes against the Islamic State. But this wasn't the first case of ISIS brutality. On November the 22nd last year, images of James Foley, an American freelance journalist dressed in an orange jumpsuit and on his knees, were released by the Islamic State. He was decapitated by the Islamic State terrorist later known as Jihadi John.
Your military air force is attacking us daily in Iraq. Your strikes have caused casualties amongst Muslims. You are no longer fighting an insurgency. So any attempt by you, Obama, to deny the Muslims their rights of living in safety under the Islamic Caliphate will result in the bloodshed of your people.
Earlier, Jihadi John had beheaded Stephen Sotloff, an Israeli-American journalist working for Time magazine and the Jerusalem Post. At the India Today conclave, Nicholas Henin, an ISIS captivity survivor, recounted the horror.
They want to provoke us, but they want to shock us. And they are even looking for the best way possible to shock us.
The Islamic State's aim is to shock viewers into submission. Islamic State fighters attach high-definition cameras to the barrels of their rifles as they fire at their victims. The aim is to capture the kill. An ISIS court pronounces 2 homosexual men guilty. They're taken to the top of a multi-story building, and as the crowd below bays for blood, the men are blindfolded and thrown off the building. One man is instantly killed. The ISIS commander then orders the other to be stoned to death.
They told me right away, they said, listen, either we kill you in a week or you come up with a quarter kilo of gold, which is the amount that the Quran entitles us to.
ISIS militiamen take no prisoners. Defeated Iraqi army troops in captured bases were made to dig mass graves, lined up against the graves and shot dead in cold blood. The latest reported example of ISIS brutality, the beheading of an 82-year-old archaeologist who refused to reveal the location of ancient artifacts in Syria in August. In July 2015, a woman was beheaded as a wedding present for a rival woman judge. ISIS child soldiers slaughtered 25 Syrian army soldiers at the Roman amphitheater. A couple was beheaded for allegedly practicing witchcraft in Syria. 5 civilians burnt alive in the Anbar province of Iraq for resisting ISIS soldiers. Woman tortured by Islamic State police for breastfeeding in public. The mass rape, auction and murder of Yazidi women by ISIS fighters is coming to light every single day. The mass rape and murders in the Sinjar, as ISIS overran the Yazidi strongholds, are only now being revealed to the world in the right earnest. The sighting of mass graves has also led to the Yazidi genocide by ISIS being taken up at the United Nations.
So what lies at the heart of the Islamic State? Not just children, even women are used as weapons by this terrorist organization. Women are raped, tortured, auctioned, brutalized, sold, killed, all in the name of religion. Now this is a terrorist group that preaches rape and says it's sanctioned by religion, the theology of rape. That is what ISIS is all about.
In its bid to build an Islamic caliphate, the ISIS uses deadly weapons, suicide bombers, children and even women. Enslaving women is central to ISIS propaganda. In fact, the terror outfit justifies rape, torture and humiliation of women and defends their actions by declaring that they are justified by Islam. It propagates a theology of rape, which propagates the idea that women can be captured, bought, traded, given as gifts and made into slaves. Yazidi women in particular are said to be treated like cattle. Not just that, the ISIS fearlessly uses sex with Yazidi women as a means to lure young men into joining its ranks. Sexual intercourse with slaves is widely advocated. ISIS even quotes the Quran to justify its subjugation of women. Bureau Report, India Today.
Investigators in Paris say one of the attackers was Olof 15. He was the one who attacked the stadium, one of the most brutal of the killers. But he wasn't an isolated case. The Islamic State recruits boys, some as young as 8 to 12. They're called the cubs of the caliphate. They're actually taught how to kill, and it's all captured on camera.
It was just 15 minutes into the friendly football match between Germany and France at the National Soccer Stadium in Paris, when two loud explosions were heard outside. As news of the French capital being under siege spread, details emerged about the possible attacker at the stadium. Initial reports seemed to suggest that the attacker was a 15-year-old boy who had detonated a suicide vest after he was stopped from entering the stadium. Eyewitness details of attacks across Paris too seem to point at one thing, that several of the killers were extremely young, possibly just teenagers. If these reports are true, then ISIS's new recruiting technique, terrifying enough, seems to be working. ISIS propaganda films targeting Western teenagers comprise short clips resembling a cross between video games and action movie trailers. Propagated virally through social media, a ready hunting ground for young terror recruits. The propaganda also promises weapons, camaraderie and excitement. Publications such as the multilingual ISIS magazine Dabiq even emphasizes sexual opportunity either through marriage to another volunteer or rape. Called the cubs of the caliphate, ISIS's child killers have proven to be an increasingly common propaganda tool too. In July this year, a video of a boy no older than 10 years executing a Syrian army officer near the city of Palmyra went viral. In a display of trained precision, the boy approached the victim from behind and used a small knife to behead him. This was the first time ISIS had used a child to carry out a brutal beheading. But as the attacks in Paris go to show, the young cubs of caliphate are perhaps the biggest weapon in the ISIS armory.
The big question is, are we in India insulated from the Islamic State threat? There is clear and present danger. The Islamic State is trying to radicalize youth in Maharashtra, in Kerala, in Karnataka, in Andhra Pradesh, in parts of Bengal. There are flags that were waved in Jammu and Kashmir. There are signs that India can ill afford to ignore. She posed as a British national. On Facebook and social media sites, she would entice young men and recruit them for the Islamic State. Afsa Jabin was deported from Dubai on September 11 along with her husband Devendra Kumar. He changed his name to Mustafa and religion to Islam. Together, they had planned to go to Syria and fight for the Islamic State. In December 2014, the Bengaluru police arrested 24-year-old Mehdi Masroor Biswas for handling a pro-ISIS Twitter handle, Shami Witness. Biswas was not only tweeting Islamic State propaganda material, but was also recruiting fighters and suggesting ways to enter Syria and reach the fighters. 3 days after the attack on Paris, the Ministry of Home Affairs in Delhi has issued an advisory to all state police forces to remain alert and to bust sleeper cells.
मैं समझता हूं कि ये ISIS का खतरा केवल किसी एक देश का खतरा नहीं है, बल्कि एक ग्लोबली एक चैलेंज है और सभी देशों को मिलजुल कर इसका मुकाबला करने की जरूरत है और भारत भी इस संबंध में पूरी तरह से सजग है।
After Friday prayers in downtown Srinagar, ISIS flags are routinely waved along with Lashkar-e-Taiba and Pakistani flags. The police say this is more to taunt the state administration. An alert has been issued to police forces in Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Kerala, Assam and West Bengal. An attempt is also being made to de-radicalize the youth.
एडवाइजरी जारी किया है कि राज्यों को सजग रहने की जरूरत है।
वो तो है।
ISIS का खतरा है। किस तरीके की एडवाइजरी है गृह मंत्रालय की?
एडवाइजरी जैसे देश को सतर्क रहना चाहिए उस हिसाब से होते हैं।
Cyber security units are also trawling through websites to keep an eye on potential recruiters and vulnerable youngsters. In September 2015, 4 youth from Kerala were deported from UAE for reported Islamic State sympathies. In November 2014, Arif Majid from Kalyan in Maharashtra returned from Turkey after having fought alongside the Islamic State militia. 3 other boys from Maharashtra were missing and feared fighting for the Islamic State. In August 2014, a garment factory printing owner in Tamil Nadu was arrested for printing pro-ISIS slogans on t-shirts. In March 2014, a 37-year-old man, Fakhruddin, called up his parents in Kudalur to say he'd joined the Islamic State in Syria. Intelligence agencies say the Islamic State recruitment is still low in India, but fear unless de-radicalization initiatives are expedited and hard, visible action taken against radical clerics, the situation could take a turn for worse. Bureau Report, India Today. The most disturbing aspect of the ISIS attack in Paris was that these terrorists perhaps used the refugee route to come into Europe. Now this is extremely alarming. All the while, when refugees were coming in, were the Islamic State terrorists plotting the terror attack? And what does this mean for refugees in the future? This perhaps poses one of the biggest challenges for Europe and for the rest of the world.
September 2015. The world woke up to this image going viral across social media feeds. 3-year-old Alan Kurdi made global headlines in his pathetic death, forcing the world to sit up and take note of the ever-increasing Syrian refugee crisis. The heartstrings were pulled and Europe was forced to let down their guard. Nothing could have worked more in favor of the ISIS terrorists wanting to sneak into European countries. One of the biggest humanitarian crises in recent decades opened the doors for ISIS to get in unobserved. The irony of it was that the root cause of the crisis was the creation in which the ISIS took active part. When civil war engulfed Syria in 2011, the ISIS at first was nowhere in the picture. The radicalized ideology still had to take shape, but the first lot of refugees had already started trickling into neighboring Lebanon, Turkey and Jordan. In the next couple of years, as refugees keep pouring out of Syria, hardened radicals from neighboring countries and even Europe begin to make their way into the strife-torn country, adding to the mayhem. In 2013, Syria was cut up into different camps and the refugee numbers kept going up. By early 2014, ISIS emerged as one of the major powers battling over Syria. And their brutalizing of civilian populations in the area they captured began driving more refugees out of Syria. Already underfunded and straining under the daily influx, the refugee camps across the Syrian borders began to resemble death camps. and ideal hideouts for ISIS operatives to infiltrate these countries. The push towards Europe in rickety boats was the logical next step for the desperate refugees. Estimates are that in 2015 itself, around 332,000 migrants have tried to reach Europe, crossing the Mediterranean Sea. Many died in their desperate attempts. Boats sank. Men, women and children drowned. And initially resistant Europe had no option but to take down the very walls of security that kept them safe from outsiders. As thousands upon thousands of refugees poured in, moving westwards and northwards to the more economically stronger regions of the Union, it became impossible to monitor each and every new arrival, an opportunity the ISIS could only welcome. It is now believed that hidden amongst the desperate thousands seeking a safer life were ISIS operatives whose sole intention was to strike terror at the heart of Europe. "129 people died, hundreds were injured because the ISIS took advantage of European benevolence towards those who mostly share the same faith as that of the killers."
Paris today, it could be London tomorrow, Washington DC day after. No part of the world is safe from terrorists, whether it's the Islamic State or terror in different forms. And perhaps that's why the world needs to come together to combat this clear and present danger.
Nisagama mani pamaga ni pamaga sani pamani sapasa जहाँ तक याद आती रहेगी